Government Order of the Day number 1.
Appropriation 2012-13 Estimates Bill, adjourned debate on second reading and amendment proposed thereto.
The Honourable Stephen Joyce.
Mr. Speaker, Budget 2012 is all about investing in our future, Mr. Speaker. It is a very impressive budget that Bill English has put together with 4 key priorities. Number 1, something the Labor Party knows nothing about, responsibly managing the government's finances. 2, building a more productive and competitive economy. 3, delivering better public services within tight financial constraints, Mr. Speaker. And 4, rebuilding Christchurch, Mr. Speaker. It is a responsible budget that creates $4.4 billion in new initiatives, $3 billion in savings and $1.4 billion in revenue initiatives. That's 4.4 new initiatives without increasing spending, Mr. Speaker. And it's a surplus in 2014-15. And you contrast that with that firm, solid economic leadership with the rabble that's on the other side of the House, Mr. Speaker, who have absolutely no economic direction whatsoever. All they have, Mr. Speaker, is the 3 denying Davids, Mr. Speaker. And the first denying David, who's not even in the House today, is David Parker, Mr. Speaker. Their finance spokesman.
Order, a point of order has been called. I apologise to them.
And in convention of the House not to refer to the absence of members, which the members...
That is absolutely correct. I ask the Minister please not refer to any absence of a member. The Honourable Stephen Joyce.
Thank you for that, Mr. Speaker. The first denying David, Mr. Speaker, is David Parker, their so-called finance spokesman, who starts from the position that he is in denial about the world economy, Mr. Speaker. He's an economist that wants to assume away the GFC, wants to pretend that the biggest world recession since the Great Depression didn't happen, and wants to pretend that Christchurch earthquakes never happened. He tells this House he's sick of hearing about the GFC, he's sick about hearing the Christchurch earthquakes. Well, so frankly are the people of Christchurch and the people of New Zealand, but they know that that's reality, and he's their finance spokesperson, Mr. Speaker. He is in denial, and being in denial is no place to start from in developing an economic policy. And then, Mr. Speaker, there's denying David number 2, also known as David Cunliffe, aka Sonny Crocker to his mates, Dave the Ham Actor. He stood up big and tall, Mr. Speaker, in front of the Newland Ladies Club and denied the last 30 years of economic...
Order, I can predict what the member's point of order will be. Members mustn't refer to members by other than their proper names, and even in a budget debate, they must still refer to members by their proper names. The Honourable Stephen Joyce.
We're a little sensitive to that one, but anyway, he stood up tall and strong, Mr. Speaker, in front of the Newland Ladies branch of the Labor Party and denied the last 30 years of economic policy in this country, Mr. Speaker, and his party's role in it, and his own role in it. His economic policy, Mr. Speaker, is to fire hose money around to any company or any person that walks in front of him, but not just money. He wants to fire hose borrowed money around, Mr. Speaker. Borrowed money, borrowed internationally, and he also wants to bet the New Zealand economy against the international money markets with the exchange rate, Mr. Speaker. That gentleman is in economic denial. He's also in denial of what David Parker's in denial of, but God forbid he'd ever be in charge of New Zealand economic policy, Mr. Speaker. So then you come to denying Dave number 3. David, what's his name? In desperate denial that the other 2 Davids want his job. Plus also his hungry-looking deputy, Grant Robertson, who's also seeking his job, Mr. Speaker. So we have these 3 denying Davids, which have absolutely no coordinated approach to economic policy at all. They deny the GFC. They say their economic plan is to want more jobs and growth. And then they whack increased taxes on growing businesses. That's what they want to do, Mr. Speaker. They want to add a capital gains tax, Mr. Speaker. And the Labor Party also says they want more growth. They say they want more growth, and then they declare they will stop almost everything the government is working on that would encourage growth, Mr. Speaker. So whether it's convention centres, whether it's oil and gas, whether it's foreign investment, whether it's more intensive agriculture, whether it's ultra-fast broadband or new roads, the list goes on and on of the things that the Labor Party would not do, Mr. Speaker. And they are also saying, and this is the one that stretches credibility to the absolute max that they want to balance the books, Mr Speaker. They say they want to do that at the same time as the government, and then they oppose every piece of spending restraint in the last 4 years. Every piece of spending restraint. Labor is saying they want growth, but then they want to tax growth. They're saying they want to stop everything that leads to growth. They're saying they want to balance the books while not stopping any spending. And they say they want to pretend the real world doesn't exist. That happens to be true. That's not an economic policy. That's a joke. That's actually snake oil salesman activity, Mr Speaker. And then you have the Friends, the Greens. The Greens, every opportunity they get, they say they want to return to basically the horse and cart, Mr Speaker. And finally we have Labor's other friend, Honi Harawira, who wants jobs in his electorate, but then wants to encourage people to march against mining in the far north. So we have the ridiculous situation, Mr Speaker. In last weekend's Weekend Herald, on page 9, we have protesters, including all of Honi's mates, against mining in the far north. And then on page 3, we have the residents of Kaikoui saying that they'll get up and go over to work in the mines in Australia, Mr Speaker. And that's the trouble with that side of the House, Mr Speaker. They have absolutely no idea of cause and effect between what you say in this House and what the impact it has on the economy, Mr Speaker. In contrast with this government, Mr Speaker, and Bill English's budget, which is working hard to grow the New Zealand economy. And the budget addresses a number of things that will help develop the New Zealand economy. Number one, Mr Speaker, is infrastructure. It will be one of the things that this country looks back on in terms of this government and say they kept investing in infrastructure during tough economic times. And we're investing billions to get the country moving more quickly. We're investing $12 billion in the high-use highways around New Zealand, opposed by Labor, opposed by the Greens. One thing we could be sure if they ever got in, none of it would be happening, Mr Speaker. We're also investing $1.35 billion to roll out ultra-fast broadband, an extra $300 million for the Rural Broadband Initiative. We're also investing, Mr Speaker, $2 billion to upgrade the metro rail systems in Auckland and Wellington. They want to spend more, of course. They want to spend 0.35 return on every dollar, Mr Speaker. That's the quality of economic analysis in the Labor Party. Mr Speaker, we're also working hard on the capital markets, encouraging New Zealanders with their opportunities to invest in the mixed ownership model companies. Mr Speaker, that will help kickstart New Zealand's capital markets, and the Labor Party doesn't want any part of that as well. Another area where we are working to grow the economy is in skills, Mr Speaker. We've made some great progress there, and don't the Labor Party hate it, Mr Speaker. We're funding the highest number of core tertiary places ever, 13,000 more in 2012 than in 2008. We're also funding for performance, Mr Speaker, for completing qualifications and courses. Bums on seats is finished, Mr Speaker. That went out with the Labor Party and the door kicked them in the bum on the way out, Mr Speaker. We're also getting excellent results for priority learners like Māori, Mr Speaker. 5,500 more places at university for Māori than in 2008, and completion rates up. And finally, we're getting great progress in literacy and numeracy. 122,000 people this year taking embedded literacy and numeracy in education, of higher level education around New Zealand, up from 36,000 just 2 years ago, Mr Speaker. So then, Mr Speaker, we go on to what's in this budget, and $42 million of investment to increase engineering diplomas and graduates, Mr Speaker, over the next 5 years, building to 500 a year. Mr Robertson hates it. He doesn't like engineers. Labor never invested in engineers. We're also investing, Mr Speaker, $100 million more for research at universities, 3,000 more youth guarantee places, and we're also putting $17 million in extra investment in science and universities. On top of that, Mr Speaker, we're investing further in research and innovation across the New Zealand economy, from basic science to applied science and to firm-led innovation with the Advanced Technology Institute, Mr Speaker. It's a massive amount of money, and it leaves those tired old research and development tax credits in the shade, Mr Speaker. The spend on research and investment goes up from $1.16 billion to $1.24 billion this year, up from $1 billion in 0809. It's an increase of 17% in 4 years. I'm proud of the government that invests in science and innovation, and don't they wish they were us, Mr Speaker? They wish they were us, Mr Speaker. So, Mr Speaker, this budget is balanced and sensible. It's about investing in New Zealand's future. It's about responsibly managing New Zealand's finances while building an innovative, productive and competitive economy that sells more to the world, supports more jobs and delivers better public services in constrained times. It's about returning to surplus in 2014 and 15. It's about continuing to protect the most vulnerable New Zealanders with Working for Families and New Zealand superannuation, Mr Speaker, and encouraging and supporting beneficiaries to the workforce. Mr Speaker, it's about investing in the rebuild of Canterbury. The National-led government is delivering on all its promises it made to New Zealanders at the 2001 election, and it is working hard to ensure a brighter future for all New Zealanders.
Jacinda Ardern.